get right to the latest. Here's meteorologist Carl Parker and hurricane expert Dr. Rick Mann.
Thanks, guys. Our meteorological team has been looking at this for quite some time now, and this is not something that we do lightly, that's for sure. There's a lot of thought, a lot of time and energy that goes into this. How did we arrive at this conclusion?
We've been looking at the strength of the storm, which is now a major hurricane, and it's within 3 to 4 days of impacting many parts of the United States. We'll start to see the fringe effects even inside of 3 days, maybe. And continued agreement upon our reliable forecast models that we're going to have something that's at least close enough to pose an extreme threat to some parts of the eastern United States.
And a couple of those reliable models have actually been trending a little farther west in the last run.
Yeah, and what's happened in the last couple of days is, you remember earlier in the week it was a lot of this trending east. Well, the models are starting to settle in a little bit more and not trending dramatically one way or the other. And there are several reliable models that hopefully we'll look at before the segment's over here that are still showing something going right up the East Coast, very close to, if not right over, the Outer Banks and very large parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. So we have this extreme threat area that we have painted in the pink here. You see our color code up here, and the extreme threat starts in eastern North Carolina, where we could have the direct impacts of a major hurricane potentially even making landfall, and that extends along the east coast of the Mid-Atlantic into the Jersey area, New York City, and the New England area, Boston. You see the cities labeled here. So there are several reasons why there's an extreme threat, and we need to highlight the fact that there are multiple threats. This is not a threat level for just wind or for just rainfall. It's for multiple threats, including wind that could cause downed trees, power lines going down, power outages, and then surge and waves near the coastline. Past hurricanes have not even made landfall and caused surge and wave damage on the East Coast. And then the rainfall threat. And these threats are not just coastal. The wind and rainfall threat are not just at the coast. They go inland as well.
And you've got saturated ground right now in southern New England and New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. You add 5 to 10 inches of rain to that, you're going to have catastrophic flooding.
And yes, and what folks might be looking at this map and go, okay, you've got me an extreme threat. What do I do? Well, this is all about preparedness. It's about taking some initial steps, making sure you have supplies to fend for yourself if the power goes out, finding out if you live in an evacuation zone. Those things you can do today.
Right. And let's take a look at what's happening with the storm now. It's a major hurricane. The ship's intensity saying that the shear is going to be very light for the next day or so. So this thing could easily get a lot stronger.
It could. The pressure continues to drop down to 954, just going straight over the southeastern Bahamas here, headed toward what's called Long Island here in the central Bahamas. The fact that it's going over the Bahamas doesn't mean land interaction is going to slow it down. The waters are warm, like you say, the shear is weak, and it's because of how strong it is now why we're so concerned about the Bahamas and concerned about the U.S. down the road.
And if you look at ships, they're saying about a 1 in 3 chance that this thing actually becomes a Category 5 in the next day or so.
You always have to plan for the possibility that the hurricane gets stronger than the exact forecast. So yes, it could get very close to Category 5, if not get there. And then it will weaken some, we think, eventually, but not necessarily on the way to North Carolina because of the Gulf Stream warm waters. Then it probably will slowly weaken. But when's the last time we saw the forecast from the Hurricane Center of a Category 2 hurricane at the latitude of New Jersey?
Yeah, it's just amazing when you think about it that there is going to be some dry air around, but it's not going to do much to the system, and the water temperatures are above average. And so, right, I mean, normally systems weaken as they go up the coast. In this case, that's not going to happen.
Not fast enough, and it's still forecasting a hurricane all the way up into Maine. So this could be a hurricane all the way up the East Coast. Now, devil's in the details. Some of the models are farther west than others. Some are farther east. But we have enough models going right over the Outer Banks, or very close to it, right over New England, and even a couple models that go right over New York City. So you're talking about the potential for a lot of buildings and a lot of infrastructure in harm's way. Preparations can't be made at the last moment. You got to start consulting with your local officials and monitoring the situation on a daily basis now.
And we want to point out that one of those models that takes a storm right over New York City is in fact a reliable global model.
And one of the key words there is a global model. It's not every day that a global model, not designed necessarily to handle hurricanes, the U.S. global model is doing a similar thing, forecasting a very large and strong system going right over the East Coast, all the way from North Carolina upward. That's very notable and very concerning. A strong system, potentially a very large system, could affect a lot of folks. You've got to prepare starting today.
And we talked about some of the impacts here. Very heavy rain, tornadoes coming in the northeast, saturated ground. That's a recipe for disaster. Wind impacts could be huge. Maybe millions of people in the dark with this storm.
Potentially, you can have a lot of power outages that last not just days, maybe even weeks. I've talked to folks here that have been through hurricanes in the past in the Northeast. Power outages can last a long time. You got to have the supplies to get through that period.
And you've talked about the fact that the surge potential is going to be huge here, and there are parts of the coastline in New England that are extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, you might not realize, if you haven't been through a hurricane up there, how significant the storm surge potential can be. It's not just a Gulf Coast problem. For example, if you get a hurricane that goes into Long Island, like the 38 hurricane did, or if you have a hurricane that goes into the area like Bob did in 1991, we have historical pictures that show structures flooded with several feet of water from the ocean. That's different than the inland flooding, which could also occur well inland from the coast.
Very well, this is shaping up to be quite a situation, and we're certainly going to be on top of it. Thank you very much for your expertise. Guys, back to you.